Welcome to the Life in Flow podcast.
The three of us, Yulia, Polina, and Irina, are exploring what life in flow and flow in life is.
Join us as we experiment, test our diverse hypotheses, and have fun in the process.
Will we find an answer?
This isn't just an intellectual discussion. We're co-creating a shared field beyond words. We're attuning to what emerges moment by moment, so that the conversation itself becomes a group flow experience.
And we invite you to become an active participant in this experiment. There will be pauses and moments of silence. We leave them on purpose because this is where magic happens.
Go beyond the intellectual information. Listen with your whole body and notice how your somatic experience shifts in the process. Share with us what reveals itself in the space where mind, body, and energy flow together.
Welcome to the Life in Flow podcast episode. Today I'm facilitating. I'm Polina, and I'm joined by my two co-hosts, Yulia and Irina. Hi, ladies. And today we are going to be exploring the topic of transitions and the rituals that some of us do or do not implement during transitions, and the potential importance of rituals actually during transitions. And more specifically, what I want to explore today is, why do some transitions feel not fully real sometimes until they are actually witnessed or marked or ritualized? For me personally, this topic comes up after the recent loss of my dad. And through that transition of him transitioning out of this lifetime, I realized that there's something that I've been kind of playing with since my grandpa passed away a year ago. But it's something that is new and not very established in my own life in terms of concept and practice, and that I'm still learning as I engage with it. I'm still learning about, and that is that ceremony. And in this case, of course, the ceremony around funerals and death and that passage, and the aspect of, for example, seeing the body, the family gathering aspect. So basically, I'm describing the rituals, right, that surround passing. They really changed my experience in a way that I didn't intellectually foresee, and maybe didn't in the past, when I was younger, didn't really have a chance to more consciously engage with. And it made me start wondering, why do humans seem to need some ceremony, some ritual around certain transitions in life? And why do they need to be witnessed through them? And how this witnessing aspect plays out through rituals and ceremony in order for the experience to feel more real, more grounded, more accessible for the digestion that needs to happen, the transmutation that needs to happen, really the new sort of version of you that you will ultimately end up landing on once an important person has passed. So that's a little bit of the background of what I want to touch on. And maybe I'll go into my story about this a little bit later. And maybe we just start with a game, as we usually do. But really, this game is just I wanna get a sense of where the two of you land when you hear the word ritual. So let's just go in a circle. I want to hear what comes up for you somatically in your body, in your energy body, if anything, when you hear the word ritual.
So we are describing our somatic experience.
Yes.
Okay.
So for me, when I hear the word ritual, I get a sensation of earth, like actual this image and this image of earth, and I don't know why, but like actual earth, like as if you're digging through the dirt. And I get visuals of, I don't know, certain objects or things I've seen in movies, but the actual sensation in my body is both this groundedness and also a bit of like a haze around it, like a little bit of maybe resistance.
For me, when I hear ritual, there are some visuals, and those look like circles of people dancing or doing something, but it's a circle. And then there is also fire. Somehow fire is really a big piece for me. And I have this sensation of some good heaviness, grounded like heaviness in my pelvic area, closed stomach, and it's kind of being attracted or feeling the gravity of the earth. Also, the earth is there.
Thank you, Yuna. Yuna?
When I hear the word ritual, I feel expansion and the sensation of being connected to something that goes beyond the visible. And the sensation of magic that somatically, I think I would describe, like this feeling that we call butterflies in the stomach. So these butterflies, I feel them in the whole body. Or maybe like the sparkling stars that feel me and the air around me.
Thank you.
So I'm less earthy out of three of us.
Yeah, that's cool.
In my rituals.
That's cool. Okay. And now for the next round, can we engage with the word sacred? When I hear the word sacred, my mind has questions that come up. I actually feel it, like it's the energy of a question mark. And yet, when I tune into the word or just like allow the word to land, I start getting the sensation of sort of a longing in my heart area, like the energy of longing, like that kind of pull. And also something very guttural and significant feeling in my like sacral area. Some kind of a weight that has like the energy of significance to it. And I was surprised actually uh when I was preparing for the episode, you know, sacred as a word came up, and at first I was just gonna take it off the plate for today's discussion because I don't, you know, much like to engage with potentially religious connotations. And yet, you know, because sacred could be very, very much in the religious context. And sorry, I'm taking myself out of the somatic experience, but I'm just explaining. But when I allowed myself to actually tune into the reaction in my body, I was like, oh, there's actually an energetic signature that is connected to this word, even though I don't want to be connected to this word. So, yeah, so this like longing sensation and this significance, like this weight of significance in the sacral area.
Yeah. I think sacred, it's from spiritual realm more than from religious, maybe, in my view. When I hear sacred, I am in a space that feels that it's holding me, this space that is like I don't need to do anything there. I can just be in that space. And that space is also it's not a passive space. It creates just by the virtue of being there. There are some transmutations happening. And although this seems to me or feels to me like a space where I don't see anything visual or I don't see any other agents or forces co-creating in that space, but it feels like it is some kind of a node in this web of a lot of beings or creatures or forces that have their own agency and that come together in that space, and yet somehow they like the whatever happens there, it doesn't feel forceful. It doesn't feel very active. Yeah, there's like no doing involved. Well, we all know we can think different things about doing. Yeah, and then for me, the somatic signature takes me also to the heart area. And just even saying sacred, like it has this gentle sighing out effect, like a wind, like sacred. Yeah, even actually in my body, as I'm saying it, there is space created, more space than usual in my throat and in my mouth and in my voice box.
I liked it so much when you became exploring it, like the sound of the word sacred. I I feel that for me, the somatic experience of sacred is very much similar to the ritual. Probably because most of my rituals are about the connection to the sacred space. So it's mostly about the expansion, me becoming bigger than my physical body, and all of that space that is me together with my environment that goes beyond the visible is filled up with these light sparkling butterflies or stars. And it feels light. But it's really like about the confusing the perception of reality. So it's like I'm sort of sliding in somewhat different reality. But if we're talking about somatic experience, this sliding into the different realities best described but what I have described.
Where is the physical in your body area from which you then go into this like higher realm? Is that because the way you're describing it, it seems like it's above you, but is that there's also no?
It's not necessarily above me.
Okay.
It might depend on the context. Sometimes it might be above, but the sensations that I have been thinking of, it's more just like it's all around me. And so the trigger point, like where it's coming from in the body, it might be different. It might be coming from the like pelvic area or from the heart area. It might also coming from like when it's the connection to the bath, it really goes from the head. But the sensation that I was describing, it's more like surrounding.
So like in your energy body, is that where you're pointing to?
That's the thing, that what I'm talking about is that about the confusing the frontiers. So there is no talking about my body, whether it's energy body or whatever. So because I am connected to the realm around me. So and we are all filled up with this sparkling energy of like sparkling butterflies or stars or whatever. So it permeates me together with my environment.
Mm-hmm. Cool. The image I am getting in terms of how we have three described this so far, and please tell me if I'm off in any way, but it seems like for Yulia and me, the word sacred first creates like an inner experience that then connects out to like the ethers of what sacred is on a bigger scale. But for you, Ir, it happens right away somewhere more on that, like you said, that fuzzy area where you're not sure where you end and like the ethers sort of begin. Yeah, did I get that right?
I'm processing what you're asking.
What do you mean by ethers?
the bigger energetic scope, right? And realm. Like not just the energetics of you, whatever is inside the body and like right outside the body, but also like the larger scope of the energies, which could be the energy here, which could be energies above, right? Energies below. Did I get the description of what you were describing right for you? Like, and the similarities between the two of us? You were?
Yeah, I'm thinking whether I can, like, whether there is a sequence
Mm.
to, because my main sensation, I think it's that I am of some space, and the space that inside of me, it's just another. Mm, they just like different levels, and there isn't a hierarchy necessarily.
What do you mean by space inside of me?
There's also opening up a space inside of me, but the main, for me, it starts with the sensation that I am held by something.
And where are you held by something?
From the outside.
Hold on. Hold on. I want to hear what Yulia's actual sensation is. So it opens up a space and you're feeling held. Where is the holding? Like what? How does that work?
The it's hard to say how holding works. It works kind of like when I'm with the tree and or in the forest, and it holds me, and it's the same way. It's just
Well, so you
some
hear the
space.
word sacred and take me through that. So where or when does the holding show up? Sacred.
The holding opens up immediately, like when I say sacred, and it opens up.
From the inside out? Because that's what I thought. No.
No. Just maybe from the inside out, but it doesn't. I actually, it's hard for me to differentiate and to really follow the exact sequence. I could probably think about that, but that just
Well,
there is some unfolding of a space.
and if you were to take a moment and like not care that we're here and we're recording and you were really to tune in, do you think you could give me a little bit more specifics about how that opens up?
I think it's a process that unfolds just in a couple of directions. So there is something coming towards me, and there is something that is expanding from me towards
Ah,
life.
okay, cool. Okay. Ida, what about you? You were tuning in, right? Did you land somewhere?
Well, I will repeat what I have already said. The specific sequence of how this connection happens might vary depending on the context.
Mm-hmm.
There might be certain movement of from inside out because I need to open up myself to the sacred space. So there might be some the opening from the inside out.
Wait, can I pause for a sec? So the
Yes.
context here is you engaging with the word sacred. That is the context. So not in some other situations, but specifically in this moment in time, as you say sacred, right? Or you hear the word sacred. What happens for you in the here and now?
Expansion.
And where, like, how does the expansion work? Is it just like from the outside in or from the inside out? Like, where, can you describe to me that experience?
The expansion works like this. So it's growing. Yeah, so it's sort of like opening up and becoming bigger, and until all the frontiers get fused out and complete connection happens.
And is there a specific flavor or essence of the energy or the frequency as you're specifically engaging with this like sacred, something sacred? Is there something specific about the expansion?
Like the only thing that comes to my mind is not really the somatic description. It's what I call the sliding off to the different reality.
Sliding off to a different reality. Mm-hmm.
It's like I'm here, but at the same time, I'm not completely here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm somewhere that goes beyond the visible world.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. How would you each define the word sacred?
Different from the mundane, that something that has significance and meaning, that is symbolic, and goes beyond the meanings of ordinary life.
For me, I think it's going to that space, and the space maybe outside of time, where the flow of life and the flow of time is different. It's things happen which are non-linear, which are emergent, that are not to be easily, or maybe not to be like forecasted. It's almost like a black hole. There is range, of course, but sacred space could become a black hole.
Okay. You brought up a few things, and just to keep us on track for what I was imagining today, you did bring up flow, which was one of the questions that I was going to bring up. And then the black hole aspect, very interesting. Maybe we will mark it for a later discussion. But when I was engaging with what is sacred, and I was doing a bit of research to help myself locate myself around this topic, flow did actually come into my consciousness because a lot of the aspects of what is sacred actually felt like a flow state, in a lot of ways, and I really had to try to like capture the very nuanced distinctions between flow and sacred. So can both of you reflect on how does that land for you? Like what comes up when you consider the nuances between flow states and like the state of something being sacred or you engaging with something sacred? You already started, but can you maybe nail down some of the nuances that make the two different? Like what takes something from a flow state into like this sacred state?
I think it's the intention to divorce yourself from waking state concepts or goals. Flow state, of course, can also, can it happen without? Yes, it can happen without a goal. But it's as if that time itself or some dimension of the space are there to really help you with the flow. Yeah, it's hard to really pin it down, but definitely there is something extra. There is another flavor to sacred. And I think sacred inhabits maybe a wider range than what we imagine by flow, if we mean the flow in the moment, like when you lose time. And like, I think sacred can have this range that it can send you deep into the underworld, or maybe high into the spirit realm. And for me, flow state is more staying in the middle earth, maybe. Or what is it like? Yeah.
What is Middle Earth?
Well, what is between underworld and the upper world?
Okay.
Okay, Ira, how about you?
I think both are trance states. So that is the connection, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Think not any flow state or like any process in the flow state will be sacred. Just the first thing that came to my mind was the situation that we discussed in one of our first episodes when I was cooking, which is one of my brightest experiences of being in flow. But I wouldn't say that there was anything sacred about that. That was an amazing experience, but it wasn't sacred. But at the same time, I think I would say that any process in the state of sacredness would be flow. At least, like from my experience, like there are a lot of these criteria that we use to describe the flow state that would be present there, like the sensation of oneness, the distortion of time, like Yulia mentioned, the different way of really of evaluating things, like how how you receive feedback from the environment. It's very different from our like executive network and in the mundane state. I would also say that, again, going back to our first episodes and to the distinction between flow in life and life and flow, I think to be able to live in flow with life, one needs to get in touch with sacredness of life. So like, because like to attribute the agency to the life itself and to the world, one needs to attribute this significance and meaning to everything in the experience that goes beyond the ordinary, beyond the mundane. So, and for me, this is what makes things sacred.
So I guess we're purporting that you can be in a flow state without the aspect of sacredness, but say if you're experiencing or engaging with something sacred, most likely you're also in flow. Like flow is part of the experience.
I think yes, I would say so.
Yul?
I'm not quite sure that flow would always be there. I'm just trying to touch on some of the diverse experiences of sacredness. And one that comes to mind for me, where I'm not sure there is flow, is lately for me, I've developed this, I would say, sacred relationship with the moon. It started during this, it started, I think, a long time ago, but now it's at the point where I do feel very different when I have enough space to focus on that experience, on experiencing and taking really fully into my awareness the moon. And that when the moon was getting fuller and fuller recently, I was sleeping on my balcony every night for a week, communing with the moon. I'm not sure I was in flow. I mean, the sense of awe was there. It's something very special about flow. But not really flow for me. Yeah, but you know, like a lot of sacred experiences, for example, involving ritual. Now I'm thinking about like my experience with rituals that are happening in a sacred place. Those, they feel like really trance states. So now I'm thinking maybe like feeling sacred space with the ritual does something very trancy, definitely.
So now you're bringing up another aspect. We could talk about whether sacred spaces are necessary for like a sacred ritual or for that experience of something sacred. Does that require some kind of special sacred place or space? Um, Also, when I tune into the state of flow, like flow states, right? It feels like, yes, you are engaging with an experience in a very expansive, full way, and your kind of attention becomes more effortless. So it's more of a like almost a zooming out in some ways. But whereas something sacred feels like something deeply significant. So yes, there's still like this altered state and an altered sense of time, but your attention is not just effortless, it's actually a lot more intentional. So there's like a zooming in aspect that's part of the sacred experience when I engage with it. So it is a sort of a flow state, but there's a different internal lens on in the sacred experience. Does that make sense how I'm describing it? Because there's like there's something about meaning that comes up, something about, like there's a depth. There's still the aspects of flow states, but then there's like a depth and a even like a maybe a weight of significance and meaning, and then like a way more intentional yes, there's like an effortless outer experience, but there's an intentionality that's like more of a zoomed in. And not just zoomed in into me, but like there's also zoomed out into like in the collective what something sacred resonates with.
Why can't we have an intentionality in flow?
We can, but when it's something sacred, doesn't it like tune into something sacred versus something that you're doing like for a performance or creativity or like a project you're in versus what are we tuning into when we're opening up into or we're experiencing sacredness? What's that smile about?
No, you just started talking about um, the way I perceived it. Now I'm thinking that maybe I understood it wrong because I don't remember already the exact words that you used. But you started when we're doing the projects and when we're like, I perceived that as a creative process, and you are speaking to the person who treats the creative process as a sacred process. So.
Okay, so that's a cool distinction. Okay. So for you, okay, actually, so I started the episode talking about the passing of my dad, right? So if the two of you don't mind, if you've had experience with, uh, someone in the core family unit passing, so was there something sacred about that experience? And if there was, would that be something that's different energetically, somatically? That the sacredness of those rituals, that those ceremonies that potentially are part of that experience versus like this creative sacredness here that you're talking about.
I mean, those are very different fields, right? If we're talking about ritual and sacredness, that about a space, well, I perceive it as a space, then that space, I think, is contributed to by other spaces. And to me, it's what, like we already talked about, as morphic fields by Rupert Sheldrake. And it's as if a doorway is opening into one of those morphic fields that holds collective information, or maybe ancestral, or like lots of different levels of information. And the effect of, to me, is can be drastically different. Well, first of all, I would even go as far as to say that even like with death, now I find that sometimes the experience is more of a mundane one, or at least not as deep as sacred. Just it's because it's coming from waking consciousness, and it's because people who are organizing it are more tending to like practicalities. And I'm not generalizing, but I think it's something that at least it has lost in depth. I don't know, for me, I vividly remember a burial of my grandmother. It was when I was like whatever, 9, I think, 8, 9. And there were women there who came, and they were like weeping the whole night, and the casket was there. And like there was so much there that was tending to that space and organizing that space, and maybe also containing whatever was, however that space was connecting to the morphic field. That was more like the people that were there were as if also hold and tended somehow to that field, but also in their collective experience, they felt, to me, there was like this cohesion that that felt really strange. Yeah, and I think it's, for me, that is like the fabric of it. Like you create that sacredness also through tending to the space at this like levels of objects, or organizing the space, or like assigning roles to different people. And so it's all together kind like a language or a pass to that door of the morphic field. But of course, when we're talking about, well, that is just about passing, but in creativity, it's, I think it's probably, if there is a group group event, then that space and how it's organized and how it's tended to, it's also like a big factor. But maybe it's not as critical. It's as if the morphic field of creativity is more forgiving somehow, or maybe easier to deal with to get in and out?
It also depends, because I don't remember, I have mentioned this experience once, but I don't know if we mentioned it in one of the episodes. I remembered just when you were talking about the forgiving morphic field of creativity. I used to participate in a theater group, and I was attending a rehearsal which I was not a part of. So I was just sitting there in the viewers part of the hall and doing my homework. I was in the university, and one girl came up to me and said, like, you're doing it all wrong. You're not supposed to do that. Your attention is supposed to be on what is happening on the stage, because if your attention is not there, but you're still here, you're disrupting the whole group flow. And she was giving me the example, which I was not able to understand at that moment, when she was supposed to during the rehearsal, or when they were rehearsing a scene, and she was supposed to hit like the musical instrument, like when you hit it and it's like a gong, but not a gong, but let's say that she was supposed to play a gong. And so the problem was that every time when she was touching the thing, the director was extremely unhappy by the way she was doing it. Because unless she was treating this like small, supposedly insignificant movement as totally sacred action, the whole scene did not work out. So it's not necessarily forgiving if you're not treating it as sacred enough.
Yeah. No, that totally resonates. Totally resonates. Yeah. And I'm now thinking about my vision quest in the desert and some of the things we did there. For example, a fire ceremony, a dancing ceremony where, I mean, everything was sacred. And in one of them, there was someone who I could tell, I think probably the others could tell, that was like not buying it or not treating it as sacred. And it was just really felt how it was like this disrupting the fabric of the experience.
Yeah, I think sacredness is coming exactly from the significance and meaning you attribute to all elements of the experience. And what came to me, talking about the comparison between flow and the sacredness. So I might adjust somewhat what I said previously, because I was reflecting on these experiences of rituals related to death. I think in terms of the sacredness, from my own personal experience, what I can connect mostly is just this action of honoring the dead in whatever context. This is when I really can connect to this sacred space of death, let's say. And so what came to my mind is that it is true that there are moments when we probably can't talk about flow because there is no actually process. There is only like the moment, the state. But still, it takes me back to that distinction between flow state and life and flow. Because I think when we are opening up to this deeper significance and meaning of our experience, we are opening up to the possibility of connecting to the flow of life. Because we're opening up to this like other significances of meaning of any experience. And hence we're opening up to something that may guide us, to something that goes beyond us we can interconnect with and weave our experience with.
Yes, that's actually the way you just described it. That sequence that you just pointed to is how I would describe my like relationship or my interaction with this sacred aspect and my dad's passing, my grandpa's passing, the family gathering, what Yulia was describing, like these more logistical aspects, more, Middle Earth aspects of things that need to be tended to, regarded, uh, organized, right? Like, so the practicalities, which if they're not treated with this more meaningful, tuned in lens, right? Like the sacredness of what you're doing, then it just becomes an empty ritual, sort of. That's like those are the things I was engaging with. Like this could be an empty ritual, or this could be a very meaningful, significant, sacred ritual. So that made me feel like, oh, so something that's ritualized can actually be different depending on the energy, the intention infused into that ritual, right? Also, what I was tuning into that felt sacred to me, and I really was engaging with, maybe for some of like the first times in my life, didn't feel like it was from the inside out. It actually felt like from the outside in, like almost like this morphic field door opened, right, because of the event that happened. And I started connecting to energies that I didn't necessarily recognize as something I came to consciously on my own. Like it was me picking it up from the field and engaging with it for the first time and starting to see things and understand things from a different perspective. Um, and also like that longing that I described to you when I connect to the word sacred, there is a longing, and I'm not quite sure what the longing is about, but it feels to me like it's a longing, like almost from the field and my connection to the field, to be more intentional and like have that infusion of sacredness and like real meaning and attention in some of these really big transitional, transformational like passages, right? That where we go through. And then there's that sense of like the life and flow, which is what you were talking about. There's almost that as a doorway to that life and flow. Um, I actually also ended up having like an A/B test, not intentionally, but just the way life turned out. With my grandpa, when he passed, I went to New York. I went to the funeral. So I actually physically was there. I was physically in the midst of this ritual, the ceremony, with the family around, physically seeing my grandpa's, body in the casket. And um, then with my dad's passing, unfortunately, I wasn't physically able to make it to New York, but my aunt called me and put me on FaceTime and showed me part of the ceremony and also showed me my dad in the casket. And surprisingly, the like I didn't need to physically be present to experience some of the shifts and the transformations that I experienced with my grandpa when I was physically there. They actually still happened with my dad because I was visually able to see his body in the casket. It allowed me to kind of transition into the acceptance and to the sort of peace around the fact that okay, he's not in the body anymore. Like visually seeing the body was very necessary for my system to go into the next phase of like this whole transitionary like sequence of things, right, that happen during the grief process. And I also was wondering whether some of the big, like very fast and big transformations that happened during that process, I wondered whether one of the reasons why they were available to me in this way was because I wasn't physically there to be part of the like the practicalities of the thing that could very easily if it's not treated in a very sacred manner, could very easily distract the person from the natural, process of the energetics and when it's to be digested and processed and like felt. Because I very much was distracted, I think, with my grandpa's ceremony, with all the physicalities and the family present, being present and all of the different dynamics between family members, like all of those things. Whereas with my dad, I didn't have to be part of that aspect of the experience. And I really was actually scared that, oh my gosh, me not being there physically, I will lose an aspect of like the family going through it together, the physical aspect of being together, going through this process. And yet I still feel like the most important aspect is not being present together and doing it together. Yes, those are nice things. Like they could potentially could be helpful. But what was most important is there the ability to like fully tune in, like have that kind of flow aspect into the sacredness of what is happening and the sacredness of the body in the casket. Like I've never had to engage with these concepts until the door opened and like came to me. And I didn't need to do anything special on that day. I just needed to allow myself to engage with the energetics of that, if that makes sense. Like I didn't need to have a special outfit on. I didn't need to be in a special space. I didn't need to be with the family members. I just needed to open up to what already exists in the morphic field, which is like this human thing about ceremonies and rituals and sacredness. It's already in the field.
Yeah. I would even say that if we are talking about ceremonies related to death, then I mean, like, it's one of the conditions almost for it to be viewed as sacred. I think it's holding some cosmological view that life is not just, but it just doesn't just end with the death of someone. And that is maybe like my experience of like other cases, and one of them very close, someone very close. It's just the sacredness actually wasn't there. The sacredness was not there. And when the sacredness is not there, it's like a space, because humans have navigated this for a long time, and it's like one of the most important thresholds that we pass, right? We get born and we die. And so there is a lot of, feels like there's a lot of wisdom or maybe like protocols that are available if you connect to the morphic field, that I would say hold it, and maybe hold people who lose someone like very dear to them, and so they don't just fall into the precipice. Like it's that sacredness that creates this very powerful container.
So that who doesn't fall into the precipice? You, the person going through the loss, or the person that has
No, the
died?
person who is going through the loss.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
And what do
Who's
you
grieving.
what's the precipice for that person?
The grief, the
The
loss.
grief.
So they don't fall into the precipice, or so that, can you clarify that piece?
Yeah. I mean, exactly. That's what you do if you lose someone. You easily fall into the precipice. And when something bigger is available, it's something that holds you.
Ah, so you don't
You.
fall into the grief as in like off a cliff, but you're actually held through it so that the experience of grief can be different. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Ah, thank you. Mm-hmm. Here, did you want to share something? Or something? No.
Nope.
Okay. So when I was thinking about, again, sacredness, flow, the ceremonies around and rituals around death, I was wondering if maybe sacredness begins when flow becomes meaningful beyond the self, and also one of those morphic doors into way more that is available is opened, like into something very meaningful. How does that land for you, that thread?
I'm more somehow I have resistance to have flow there. Like something like an altered state feels more passing to this occasion.
Because you feel like flow in an altered state would be two different phenomena?
Because
I
not
would
all
still,
altered states are flow.
yeah, I would just argue that there are different altered states. So
Okay. Can we reflect on what we have discussed so far on this topic? What feels resonant? What feels like maybe can be useful to unpack in another episode? I would love an actual reflection from each of you of everything we've done thus far. It'll help me identify where we all individually are, and also clarify where I am, because I'm feeling a little bit floaty and a little bit like there are all these doors open, and if I'm not sure how well we did with like at least following one significant thread throughout the episode so far. Can you help me reflect on that?
I'm still not sure that I totally agree with Yulia's distinction between that, or not between that. I don't know how to describe it, but what we have just mentioned, that sacred space or sacred action, whatever sacred, is not necessarily, so it requires an altered state, but it's not necessarily flow. I'm just like, I'm thinking, okay, that would require more observation from my part, like of my experiences to think about that. I'm not sure that I agree with that, but so that's just requires more observation. And your last statement is something that you said about that. I don't remember already. So like, what was the sequence? Whether you said that like the connection to the morphic field provides the access to sacredness, or the other way around. But somehow this, yeah, please,
The sacredness begins once the flow, the flow state or the flow experience becomes meaningful beyond, like something we would usually associate with performance, right, or creativity, but it becomes a lot more meaningful in terms of the significance, whether it's like internal significance and meaning or like significance beyond the self. And then there's this also opening into a morphic field that also resonates and holds a lot more energetics for that sacredness.
So there is something here that I think for me also requires more reflection and more observation from my part. So there is something interesting here. I was just thinking about my own experiences of sacredness, and my first reaction was, well, I don't know if I needed this, connection to the morphic field. I just knew it, like from the beginning. I knew what this sacred state was. And then I thought, okay, but how did I know that? So, yeah, I think that there is something here. We might not be aware of it, but we probably are connecting to some kind of morphic field that allows us to shift out of the mundane perception of the reality and to find these deeper meanings, deeper significance of the experience. So I totally agree with the first part that like the sacredness comes from the attributing the new meaning and the significance to what is going on. No, so like this morphic field part requires more investigation and reflection from my part.
Yeah. For me, it really sounds true because my family is not religious and my family is not into rituals specifically, other than like the normal aspects, ceremonial aspects of like, what do you do when someone dies, right? But there isn't really an emphasis on like the sacred aspect of any of those things. Other than, of course, everyone's grieving and everyone's processing how they feel and what does this mean. But again, there wasn't something I could tune into that would be more available on the physical level with my family members or like the way we do things. So this experience was really it felt like I was accessing something beyond me and my family. And it felt very significant and big and powerful. And this longing was there that I didn't even quite recognize because, again, I wasn't raised that way. So then I was like, okay, what am I picking up on that's even beyond all of us going through this experience? But also this door wasn't available before to me. It only became available when my grandpa died last year. And it wasn't even fully open because I didn't have the same experience that I just had with dad. So it was more like the door got kind of cracked open a little bit. And then I went to the casket and I touched my grandpa's hand, which, certain parts of me were like, "Oh my God, Polina, what are you doing?" But then there was another part that was like, "No, I need to do this." And I touched his hand, and of course I could tell that he's no longer in the body, but I had an experience of like this transmission, or like my cells really feeling his cells, like even just the physical human animal body, and really feeling like, oh, I'm really of him. He's in me. Like he's actually in my genetics, in my DNA, in my cells. And it was a very transformative kind of experience. And I started from that point on actually feeling like what aspects of me are grandpa. And it was like all of this really beautiful and weird, threads coming alive or coming in. I don't even know what the direction was. It was like, or all of it at the same time. And then also just being there and seeing how well the family is transitioning together. This is like it felt significant in a way that I didn't really necessarily touch before. So that by the time I got to dad, the door was already way more open because there were already things happening. And then, I started getting access to even more, again, completely outside of the logistical reality that is available to me. And this whole sacredness aspect energetically feels like elevated to a degree that is just not in my physical experience, so that I know this is not mine in this lifetime. It's something else beyond it. And I even was like, oh, I even understand why, for example, in the Jewish tradition, they sit Shiva for 7 days. And the person who loses the family member is not the one that's organizing everything. Like the family members come together and they help with all of that, so the person can actually stay in the experience. And this was the first time that I was like, wow, I wish I actually was sitting Shiva for 7 days, even though I wasn't physically there, but still, so that life could just stop and I could just really give my focus and attention just to the meaning and the sacredness of this transition that I really felt like I was going through. And that not everyone on the outside world even understood. Even my partner thought, like 3 days later, there was a part of him that thought, well, all right, it's over. Like the funeral happened. You cried for a few days. Are we back to normal? And I almost wish that there would be like a ritual and a ceremony that would instruct him to know, well, no, I'm still like fully giving my attention to this. We're not back to normal life yet. So these new threads are coming into my consciousness about how important like rituals and ceremonies could be, and not because of like the specific outfit of it, but because of how it could hold and facilitate the experience of what is really truly meaningful and significant, and like that connection to like something bigger and higher.
Yeah, and don't forget about Underworld.
Meaning?
You said that you like high ends is all lower because like the significance and meaning may come from the things that feel darker and heavier, and like from the underworld, not necessarily from the higher spheres.
And
That's
you
an
can also
interesting thought. Yeah, go ahead.
you can also argue that every transition, or not like you cannot argue, but there is a definition that every transition is about death.
Yes.
And so as a death, it holds a very special connection to the underworld. I just somehow in my reality, in my field, it's much more going down than going up.
That's so interesting because in the beginning when we're engaging with those words, right, I also had a more of a downward, more heavy like sensation about the words, but then as we went into this last part of the conversation, it really feels like it's an up thing. Like the doors, the sacredness, it was like more of an up thing. So I'm gonna need to tune into this myself to see where's the connection point. Why did I feel it more down in the beginning and then really went up towards the when I got into the actual story of it.
But it's also a journey, right? Like
Exactly.
in this
So,
journey, you go into the underworld and you die, and then you
and then you come back,
merge.
and then you
Yes,
go to the
sometimes you
heaven, and
don't,
then
and
you die
sometimes you
again.
do.
But
Okay.
you asked also about like what could be worth exploring in
Yes.
other episodes, and I think the topic of the rituals itself is really one of that, because it has the direct connection to the flow state and to the trance states. So it has the direct relationships. And another topic, it might seem related, but it's also like different somehow. It's the particular kind of rituals, which are the rite of passages, the rites of passage, like, but that are necessary exactly to accompany these transitions. And we somehow in the modern world lost the connection to the significance of the rites of passage. And so that is why I believe many times we're not able to go through the transitions like in a more just to go through. We're not going through because there are no logistics that provide this passage.
Yes, we could even say the transition into perimenopause and menopause. I mean, there isn't really, a transition ritual that could be there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Something that's so biological, right? And so like more even grounded to the physical reality. Okay. Yul?
I don't like it to divide physiological and grounded to this physical reality. I'm sorry, it's it's not to this topic, but I'm just voicing my my resistance.
Resistance. The resistance
No,
finally came.
it's
It's
not a resistance, it's a revolutionary spirit.
Wait, but so you have an issue with what I just said about the perimenopause and menopause being a transition that's more
It's a
connected?
transition at many levels. I mean, one of the
Yeah,
attributes of
that's
this
true.
transition is that you no longer menstruate, but it's just one of the attributes.
Yeah.
And I mean, even like consider the physicality of that, and just like the power of that every month you used to bleed blood, and
Yes,
now no
physicality,
more. So
physiological process.
um yeah, no, to
Meaning
me,
it
Polina, the
starts.
way that you divide it, it sounds like Oh yeah, this physicality of it as opposed to, like all the more superior realms. But I think that's like the physicality actually is what matters. Because without the physicality, you're not going to like feel a loss. You are not going to transition. You're not going to be initiated anywhere. So it's exactly like it's the core of of like sacredness to me. That's what I want to say to tie it to the topic of our discussion.
And I only said physicality because it's kicked off by a physical process. But of course, there's so many other aspects to this. And the initiation into it and out of it are not actually part of, our society and the way things are set up. But it could be so much more significant beyond just the physical, okay, now I got my period or now I don't have my period. It's kicked off by the physical aspect, but there's so much more to it.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, it's like, we can also say that it's not what really, that causes that transition. It's not necessarily age. For some people, it's just, something.
I didn't say age.
Something about their life, or well,
I
you mean
said the
like there's
physical,
something.
meaning there's a hormone shift. Things are, shifting, and physically things are
Or
transformed.
on the mechanics, there is hormone shift, but like what's beyond that? Like why are the hormone shifting? Is I mean, it's like such a multi-layered process that has so many feedback loops and can take us as far as um the underworld or the upper world.
Apple World?
Upper
Apple
world.
world.
Oh, oh,
Tomato world.
upper world. Okay, well, I nominate you as the leader of that episode, Yula.
No,
Which one
which
about
episode
menopause?
exactly? On the rites of passage or on the
Now, on the rites
perimenopause?
of passage when it comes to periods and menopause.
An episode on menopause. Why not? I mean, that is a very a topic very dear to my heart, and that holds actually it holds some energy. It holds some good energy.
Good. Okay, so we have some topics coming out of this episode.
Maybe.
Maybe.
I'm
Okay.
yeah.
Can I get a reflection from both of you about what you're taking away from today's discussion?
Well, I will repeat what I've just said, that like I have some reflections to do and observations to observe regarding what has been discussed.
Mm-hmm. Yul?
I'm taking away the sense of kind of like meandering
Yeah.
that was happening for me. It's like, woo, here, there, like how this connected, well, sacredness and ritual, but then flow and what opens up and when. But I think what I'm taking with me that it's, oh, I had those experiences, but I'm taking more in or more fully in my awareness is how important that in a group of people access to something much bigger that ritual can provide this liminal space, right? This thing where just really crazy things might happen. There may be no time, depending on the threshold that's being crossed and the depth. It's how important it is to for all to be holding the sacredness. Because I think that just one person not fully occupying the experience, and that liminality and everything that can happen there is gone.
Well, that makes me think that potentially me not being physically present at the funeral could have affected the entire experience for the rest of the family members. Right? Because I'm not fully in it. I'm not fully holding the
Well, no, or maybe
same.
they are not fully in, and
Oh,
that experience
yeah,
wouldn't have been available for you if you were there, because they
True,
are not in the
exactly.
true,
in holding the sacredness,
true.
and you are.
Yeah.
And I've had plenty of times when me being on my own and holding sacredness, it just like so much more is in that for me, and it feels like for the space and even for people who are not there, who by all rules should have been there,
Mm,
but they are not occupying the space of sacredness. And me inhabiting that experience with my full attention and my sacredness, I feel it's I mean it's it does create that space of sacredness that ritual creates, like of like liminality and shifts and you know dying and emerging in a different state. Um, yeah.
I did have that sense um when I worked through, some of the parts of me that were like worried or not sure about like how this whole thing went. But then when I landed on like really intentionally sitting through the funeral at the same time as New York, and I actually touched, I was connecting to dad, not to them in that room, right? But like to dad in spirit form. And I actually started feeling a lot of like positive vibrations about the fact that I was sitting and I was looking at palm trees and blue skies and the sun and birds. And I was really like intentionally bringing in a very different energy and experience into this part of the transition, for him, for me. And I even became glad that I was able to bring that in, that instead of like murky, dark New York, he also got to, you know, potentially connect with the other energies that were being held for him, that maybe he didn't have as much during his lifetime even. And also I didn't have with him in during our life together. We never like went on vacation, and saw anything beautiful together. So it was actually a very beautiful connecting energy of something else during that transition that wouldn't have been available if I went to New York. So none of it is linear, and significance and sacredness and meaning. I mean, there's so many internal doorways, but also like the doorways in the morphic field, and it's such a journey of exploration. And it's so interesting when things become less inside out and more like outside in, which is, I think, the transition that I'm going through in general, uh, which creates, like so much more magic, as Ida would say, or like what is real, the episode we just did. What is real? Um, it's an interesting experience, but I also have a lot more to reflect on and digest and process and, locate in me. Did I interrupt you? Did you finish with what you're walking away with, Yul? Because I kind of
I finished. Yeah.
yeah, okay, good. And then I picked up on it, and went into my spiel. Okay, well, thank you, ladies, for going on this journey with me today, this meandering journey. I like that description, Yulia. It did feel very meandering, and there were, like as I said, many different threads and doorways, and I wanted to have a light touch just to see what is here around this topic, but maybe we can have more deep dives, like you said, about rituals themselves and rites of passage and maybe menopause. But I'm grateful that we were able to explore in this way today. So thank you very much. And for anyone listening or anyone that's seeing this on YouTube, we would love to hear from you. Please share, where do you sit, or how does it land for you, these concepts of sacredness and rituals and meaning, and how does flow tie in or doesn't tie into all of this? We would love to hear from you. And we will see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. How was it for you? We believe that the more people experience group flow together, the better off we all are. More connected, more creative, more alive. So let's expand the field.
If this episode resonated with you, help us spread the word. Share it with a friend, leave a comment, or give us a rating. We love you.
Do subscribe so you'll know when the next experiment comes out. You can also connect with us on our Life and Flow group Substack. We'd love to hear from you. Let's keep flowing together.